All right, so here's a breakdown of the free response question practice. You want to make sure you do this on your own first and do as much as you can, because watching it makes sense and then you can reproduce it, but you got to get used to seeing what code you can create, how many points you can eke out on your own. So if you haven't done that yet, pause this video, go do it, come on back. All right, so first thing we look at, they always kind of have this intro here, but if I look at it, I have a public class light sequence. They don't tell me my attributes, which is another name for fields or instance variables. Then they describe with comments above their things. So here's a constructor, and they say parameter sequence is the initial sequence you start with. Then say, okay, if you want to insert a segment, here's what it is, and it returns a string starting at the index IND. So it's going to return a new sequence after inserting something. You don't have to write these because they just don't show you what's written in it. Here you can update the value using change sequence. It doesn't return anything. And then you can display it, so it doesn't return anything. So the only one that returns something is this insert segment. Okay, so first one is write a statement to create a light sequence object. This is a great skill to have, and we already have it. So to create a new object, we're going to have to use the constructor. So you have to first start with saying what type of object it is. That's light sequence. And then you name it grad show because they told us to. Okay, so we named it grad show, and it equals, you have to use the word new, and then we call it the constructor. And the constructor is just desiring a string. So make sure you type it in with the quote marks. 0, 1, 0, 1, space, 0, 1, 0, 1, space. All right. So semicolon, call that one done. All right, that's how you create a new object. You move on to the next question. Write a statement that'll display. And displaying is pretty easy because it doesn't have a void, it just needs an object. So that's just checking, do you know the dot method and a semicolon. So that one's super easy too. So some of these are easy. Write a statement that'll be used to update this light sequence to this thing. So you look, change sequence is the update one. You don't want to insert anything in it. So this one requires you to type something in. It's still void though. So you have to call it on an object still. So you're going to say grad show dot change sequence. Oops. Okay. Did I misspell that? Hold on. And then let's go up here and look at what it is. Make sure I spelled it right. Change sequence, and we're going to put in a string. So the string we're going to put in is this one. 0, 0, 1, 1, space. 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. Okay, so we updated that. That's not too crazy. Semicolon on that. So far, so good, right? Hopefully. And then, well, we have a 10,000 word limit. Now we're going to write code that'll call the insert segment method to insert this thing in the current sequence for grad show at index 4. Resulting is going to be stored in the string result sequence. So we're going to go, so you're not printing anything, but you need to make the result sequence string. So you can do it two ways. You can say string result sequence and declare it first, and then okay, result sequence, sorry about that, equals, or you could do it all at once, right? I can do it separately or I can do it all at once. I don't need to do this in two separate lines. as long as I say string first. So we're going to change our value. So we're going to take our old one, grad show, and we're going to use our insert thing. So this won't change grad show at all. It's just going to store your answer because it returns a string. So it's going to do this thing and send back a different answer with it inserted, so you don't have to worry about messing up your original as long as you store the old one. Okay, so insert segment is the name of this thing. So we're going to call it insert segment. And then it requires a string and an index. So our string is going to be 111 space 111. Oops, 4 ones. And then comma, where we want it to land, which is the index 4. Let me double check that. Yep, integer index, string there. Okay, and it's stored in a string. So that's looking good. All right, and let's check. We're cruising along here. We only got 2 left. Oh no. Oh no. Hold on. Hopefully it saved all my good stuff. No. Oh well. You can pause and rewind and look at that. All right, so assume the string old sequence has been properly declared and initialized and contains a string segment. Write the code segment that will remove the first occurrence of segment from the old sequence and store it in the string new sequence. Consider the following examples. So if old sequence is this and the segment is 11, then you chop off the 11 and store it into new sequence. This one is looking for an 11. It chops off the 11 at the back. And then if you're looking for 0 zeros, it's going to chop off these first 2 zeros. So it basically will grab the first time it happens. So when I read that, I start thinking index of, because index of will find the first time something happens. Okay, so let's think about that for a sec. So when I think of that, I think, oh geez, we're going to have to chop these things up, whether it's at the beginning or the end or the middle. And that's what they're showing you. Here's a beginning, here's an end, here's a middle. So I'm going to have to chop it up. The first thing I need to do is find where that segment happens the first time. So I'm going to find the index and I'm going to store it. Now, I don't know what you'd do if you didn't store this. You could probably write this in there, but I'm trying to make it as clear as possible for the grader, me, and see exactly where the first time what are we looking for? We're looking for segment. Okay. Okay, we're just looking for segment. So old sequence.index of, oops, and we're going to take the index of a segment. So I'm assuming we got a string named, yeah, here it is, a string segment. So we can just use segment here. So that'll find where it happens first. So if it happens at spot 0, 1, 2, if it happens at 2, it'll record the starting spot for where it happens. Okay, so now we have to make a new string, store something in new sequence. So we have to chop out the old and rebuild something as new sequence. Now don't forget, don't just start with new sequence. You have to say string new sequence. Okay, and then we're going to find the stuff before your segment, because let's say that happened at spot 2. Well, you got to take a substring. So dot substring that starts at 0 and goes to index. Remember, we just stored this as index. Remember, it doesn't include the space of the last number. It does include the first number. We're going to concatenate that. So that gets me all the good stuff before the index. Now I got to add to it all this stuff after I remove that chunk. So old sequence dot substring. Now this is the trickier part because you're like, what the heck? How do I get the rest of it? Well, if you don't know how long this is, you can start at index plus however long it is, because I don't want to start at the beginning of index or I won't chop it out. And how are you going to find how long a segment is? Well, there's something called length. So if it's 3 letters long, it'll move my starting point 3. Now you don't have to go to the end, because remember, if you put a beginning and the end, substring will start there and end one before there. If you don't put a beginning and the end, if you just put a number, it'll grab that index and everything after it. So this was a tougher question, especially this back part. Oops, and I made a little error here. There we go. Segment.length is right there. Yeah, so anyway, that's that one. Don't forget your semicolon, and that should do it. So let's check out the last question. And the last question is, 2 lights will be arranged on a 2-dimensional plane. The vertical distance between 2 lights is stored as a double value. The horizontal distance is a double variable b. And the straight line distance is, oh, that's good old Pythagorean theorem, right? So write a code segment that prints the straight line distance between 2 lights according to the formula above. Okay, so we basically have to do the, we're going to print out this thing. Okay, so we're going to go system.out.println. I think we can probably do this in one move. So we want to take a square root of the whole thing, right? So that's math.square root. So that's one you should know. And then inside this square root, I'm going to make sure I get my whole thing here, right? I'm going to go to the inside here. So inside my square root, what do I want to put? I want a to the second power, so you'll do math.pow. That's another one we know, right? And a to the second power would be a comma 2. Space that out so it looks better. Okay, and then plus math.pow of b comma 2. So b to the second power. I want to space that too so it looks pretty. Okay, so that would be pretty easy way to do it. You could also, do or system.out.println. You could just do it like the old-fashioned way and say math.square root. There's no way around that. That's one you should know. And then you go like a times a plus b times b. I think the point of this was to check if you remembered your math functions like square root and power and absolute value and stuff like that. So there's 2 different ways to do that. Alright, so hope that makes sense. It's a lot of good stuff. I think this one's the hardest because you had to know about index, you had to know about substrings and how they work with a starting and an ending. You had to really think out this, where you say, okay, if I want to start past the index, I need to find its length, add it to the old index, and remember that it'll go all the way to the end if I just put one number in here. Alright, hope that cleared it up. If you had any struggles, I bet you got a lot of those points. And good luck, preparing for the test. Alright, talk to you later, folks.